Today we're heading into ancient Egypt, into a story filled with, well, beauty, incredible power, and just so much mystery. You're talking about Queen Nefertiti. I mean, you hear the name and you instantly picture that amazing bust, right? That stunning face. It's captivated people for ages, but despite that fame, her actual story, still so much we don't know.
Absolutely. And our task today is really to try and piece her life together. We're working with, fragmented records, some amazing discoveries, but also theories that, frankly, still have historians scratching their heads. Our aim for you is to pull out the most compelling insights, the surprising facts about her time, who she was, and these questions that just linger.
Okay, let's start with her identity. We know her as Nefertiti, but her full name was Neferwatan Nefertiti. That's quite a name. It translates to something like, beautiful are the beauties of eight and the beautiful one has come. Just imagine. We say Nefertiti, but back then it might have sounded more like Neftita, perhaps, or maybe Neferhiti.
And what's truly fascinating here is her list of titles. It was extensive, and it really tells you about her stature. She was hereditary princess, great of praises, lady of grace, sweet of love, lady of the two lands. But then you also have main king's wife, his beloved, great king's wife, his beloved, lady of all women, and even mistress of Upper and Lower Egypt. These titles, they weren't just for show. They signaled real power, a unique position.
But even with all those grand titles, it's pretty surprising how little we actually know for sure about her background. Before she married Akhenaten, she sort of appears on the scene.
There is a theory, though. It's based on some interesting, though maybe speculative, links. We know about a woman, Tay, the nurse of the great royal wife, and her husband, Ai, who had this title, God's father. Some Egyptologists think God's father might mean father-in-law to the pharaoh, so maybe Ai was Nefertiti's father. But, and this is important, there are no sources explicitly saying Ai and Tay are her parents. It's an educated guess, certainly helped by Ai's later influence.
What about other ideas? I think I've heard she might have been Akhenaten's sister.
That one's generally dismissed now. It seems unlikely, mainly because she never has the titles king's daughter or king's sister. Those were usually pretty clear indicators. Another idea floated was that she was Mitanni princess, to Dukipa. Some scholars looked at her name, the beautiful woman has come, and thought, well, maybe that points to a foreign origin. But again, there's just no solid proof she wasn't Egyptian, or why Tadikipa, who was actually married to Akhenaten's father first, would suddenly change her name like that.
So she marries Akhenaten, and they have a family. 6 daughters, is that right? Meritaten, Meketaten, Ankhesenamun, Neferneferuit, and Tasheret, Neferneferur, and Sitapurnri. And here's something key, a recent insight. Genetic studies on some royal mummies confirm she was not Tutankhamun's biological mother. That's a big clarification.
A very big one. A common mix-up, now firmly corrected.
Now, her first appearances in the records, they place her in Thebes with Amenhotep V before he became Akhenaten. They're shown worshipping the Aten, the sun disk.
And that really sets the scene, doesn't it? If you connect this to the bigger picture, you see the beginnings of this radical religious shift. Nefertiti and Akhenaten weren't just adjusting things slightly, they were pushing Atenism. It was, well, maybe not pure monotheism as we think of it, but certainly a kind of monolatry or henotheism, basically focusing intensely on one god, moving away from Egypt's traditional crowd of deities. A huge change.
And her prominence early on was just astonishing. The mansion of the Benben at Karnak was dedicated to her, and in some scenes, she appears almost twice as often as Akhenaten himself. That's just remarkable for a queen at that time.
It really is. And her power is shown in some vivid ways in the art. She's depicted smiting enemies, that classic pharaoh pose defeating foes. That was reserved for the king. And even more striking, you see images of captive enemies decorating her throne. Again, that's pharaoh stuff, not typically queenly iconography. It suggests a kind of king-like authority.
So building on this religious revolution, year 4 of Akhenaten's reign, they make this huge decision, move the capital entirely to Akhetaten, modern Amarna. And then year 5, he officially changes his name from Amenhotep I to Akhenaten, fully committing.
Exactly. And life in Akhetaten, this new city, was all about the Aten. Huge open-air temples. Nefertiti and the family lived in the great royal palace, maybe also the northern palace. And her steward there was a man named Merir II.
We get this amazing snapshot in year 12 from inscriptions and tombs belonging to Huya and Merir II. It shows this massive foreign tribute from Karu up north and Kush down south being presented to Akhenaten and Nefertiti. And importantly, all 6 daughters are there, a complete family picture. But it's also one of the last times we see Princess Meketaten alive.
Such a poignant detail. Meketaten likely died soon after, maybe year 13, perhaps year 14. We actually have these incredibly moving scenes of Nefertiti, Akhenaten, and three princesses mourning her death. A very human moment.
And speaking of how they looked, the art style changed too, didn't it? Flinders Petrie found some pieces, representations of Nefertiti that seem to be from the middle or later part of the reign. And the style is less exaggerated than the very early Amarna art, and it had sort of relaxed a bit.
Yes, that's a noticeable shift, perhaps reflecting changes in the court or just an evolution of the artistic movement itself.
Which leads us into this really fascinating debate among scholars.
Hmm.
Did Nefertiti become more than just a great royal wife? Did she actually rule alongside Akhenaten as a co-regent?
That's a very strong possibility, supported by a lot of the evidence we've just talked about. As you said, she's shown in so many places with a status equal to the king, doing kingly things, smiting enemies, riding chariots, worshiping Aden in a pharaoh's specific way.
And then I know. This is where it gets really interesting. Her name seems to vanish from the records, but it's replaced by a co-regent named Nefertiti, who we know was a female pharaoh.
Precisely. Which leads to this powerful theory, that Nefertiti herself took over. Like Hatshepsut before her, she may have assumed kingship, using the throne name Pharaoh Neferneferuoden, ruling after Akhenaten died, maybe briefly, before Tutankhamun came to the throne. This seems more plausible than an older idea that she disguised herself as a male pharaoh called Smenkhkare. He was likely a different co-regent who probably died before this female pharaoh, Neferneferuoden, reigned.
Now, before 2012, the thinking was quite different, wasn't it? That she just disappeared around year 12. People guessed maybe she died, maybe in a plague, or fell from grace. And finding those little funerary figures, the Ushabti fragments with her name, seemed to support the idea she had died.
Right. But then came 2012, and this game-changing discovery. An inscription found in a quarry dated clearly to year 16 of Akhenaten's reign. And it specifically mentions the great royal wife, his beloved, mistress of the two lands, Neferneferuoden Nefertiti. This was huge. It proved, without a doubt, that both she and Akhenaten were alive and in their roles very late in his reign, the second to last year, in fact.
Wow, so that completely changes the timeline. It means that female pharaoh Neferneferuoden must have ruled in that gap between Akhenaten's death and Tutankhamun's rise. She had to have ruled alone.
Exactly. It fits perfectly. And this female pharaoh, Neferneferuoden, used an interesting epithet in one of her cartouches effective for her husband. That strongly points to her being either Nefertiti herself or possibly her daughter Meritaten acting on behalf of her deceased father. If it was Nefertiti ruling as pharaoh, her time ended probably by year 3 of Tutankhamun's reign. That's around 1331 BC. That's when he changed his name to Tutankhamun, signaling the big swing back to the old gods, likely under Horemheb's growing influence and the beginning of erasing the Amarna experiment.
Okay, so such a massive figure. Surely we know where she was buried. But no, that's another huge mystery, right? Her final resting place. The royal tomb at Amarna had space, maybe an unfinished annex meant for her. But it seems Akhenaten died first, so she probably wasn't buried there.
Correct. And there's another unfinished tomb, Tomb 29. It's large, potentially pharaoh size, maybe started for her. But again, no burial chamber was completed, so not there either.
Then in 2015, there was that huge buzz. Nicholas Reeves suggesting scans showed hidden rooms behind the walls in Tutankhamun's tomb. Maybe Nefertiti's burial chamber?
Yes, that generated enormous excitement. But unfortunately, follow-up radar scans were quite definitive. No hidden chambers exist there. So that theory, while exciting, didn't pan out.
It feels like we've been close before. What about those mummies found way back in 1898 in KV35, the tomb of Amenhotep II, the elder lady and the younger lady?
Right. Well, the elder lady was eventually identified quite conclusively as Queen Tai, Akhenaten's mother, first through a lock of hair found elsewhere matching, and later confirmed by DNA.
But the younger lady in 2003, archaeologist Joanne Fletcher proposed that was Nefertiti.
She did, but that identification faced a lot of criticism, notably from Dr. Zahi Hawass. And subsequent CT scans and, crucially, DNA analysis showed something else. The younger lady is actually Tutankhamun's biological mother, and she's a daughter of Amenhotep III and Queen Tai, making her Akhenaten's sister. But she is not Nefertiti. So another possibility ruled out, but it did clarify Tutankhamun's immediate parentage.
Is there anything else? Any other candidates?
There's one more mummy, often discussed, KV21b. Found in tomb KV21 with another female mummy. DNA couldn't give a final ID, but confirmed she was 18th dynasty royalty, died around age 45. And significantly, her arm was found in that bent queenly pose. The theory links her to the other mummy, possibly Ankhesenamun, suggesting maybe a mother-daughter pair like Tai and the younger lady, so maybe Nefertiti, but still uncertain.
Let's shift gears slightly to something just, well, astonishing. A document found not in Egypt, but in the Hittite capital, Hattusa, from the Amarna period.
Ah yes, the Hittite letters. It's an incredible piece of history, recorded in the deeds of the Hittite king Suppiluliuma I. He was besieging the city of Carchemish when he received a letter from an Egyptian queen. And the quote from it is just stunning. She writes, "My husband has died and I have no son. They say about you that you have many sons. You might give me one of your sons to become my husband. I would not wish to take one of my subjects as a husband. I am afraid."
I mean, that proposal was just unheard of. Egyptian royal women, especially from the New Kingdom, simply did not marry foreigners. It was extraordinary.
Suppiluliuma himself was shocked. He apparently said, "Nothing like this has happened to me in my entire life." He was suspicious, sent an envoy to check things out, and probably lost his best chance to peacefully bring Egypt under Hittite influence. And tragically, when he finally did send a son, Prince Senanza, the prince died on the journey. Murdered, perhaps. A very dramatic end to a unique situation.
So the big question is, who wrote the letter? The Hittites called her Dakamunzu, which just means the king's wife in Egyptian.
The main candidates are usually listed as Nefertiti, her daughter Meritaten, or Tutankhamun's wife Ankhesenamun. For a long time, Ankhesenamun seemed likely, assuming her husband Tutankhamun had just died. But with our newer understanding, especially about Horemheb coming later and suppressing the Amarna kings, it's more plausible the dead king mentioned was Akhenaten. And if that's the case, Nefertiti becomes a very strong candidate. Nicholas Reeves certainly argues for her, pointing to her known power and influence. Who else could make such a bold, unprecedented move?
So Nefertiti remains this captivating enigma. A woman with immense influence right at the heart of this huge religious upheaval, possibly even a ruler, a pharaoh herself, and yet the core details her origins, her ultimate fate. Where she rests, they're still debated, still being pieced together.
Exactly. And perhaps that leads to a final thought for you, our listener, to ponder. Even with all our modern science, centuries of digging and research, these fundamental mysteries about Nefertiti endure. What does this continuing uncertainty surrounding one of history's most recognizable figures really tell us about how much we can truly know about the past and the secrets it still holds?